Jan Christoph Duda ties the match. We're jumping into this one because it's dramatic for Liem against Alireza Firouzja. If the young Frenchman wins this game, he will win the match. Liem he needs at least a draw with the black pieces, and the game has started. What are we watching?
Yeah, so it's a very trendy variation of the Spanish opening, the Roy Lopez. Seems like all the top players now are playing this position from white and from black. And this bishop kind of sortie here by black, it does invite white to challenge in the centre immediately, starting with this pawn push. White is likely to hit this bishop. There we go. It's going to take a step back. And here there's a variety of plans for white. Firouzja, I know, has played this position as black himself, this opening at least, including against Magnus Carlsen. So Firouzja extremely experienced in this type of situation. White now will just try to solidify his centre. Those two white pawns in the middle of the board, they just look great. Whereas Liem, as black, will try to challenge that structure.
I've also just seen, and I know we don't jump to other games, but Magnus's first move, he's back at it again. He's gone for 1a3.
Oh my gosh.
Which is maybe a move to try and tilt hands. It's basically like, maybe, you know, because he knows hands is very obviously emotional, and he's basically, I think he's going to be playing a move like that to basically, you know, try to put him off kilter. So I just thought that was worth mentioning, because it is a very peculiar first move, you know, to play. So, yeah.
Magnus looks cool, but maybe if we can get a picture on Hans. Yeah. Hans, is he smiling? Is he annoyed by that move? I mean, if someone played it against me, I would feel, they're not respecting me.
Yeah.
But, OK, Hans looks relatively focused. That's good. That's a good sign for the American. He'll try to punish Magnus a bit later. And maybe if we show this on the board.
Yeah, I would love to see. What is the idea with A3?
Not too many ideas behind it. It's got to be said, it's just a surprise weapon. It's pushing a pawn on the side of the board. We've seen Magnus throughout the tour play F3, he's played H4, he's played almost every move under the sun, but 1A3. The reason this is frowned upon is it just doesn't occupy the centre. It doesn't really contribute. It's not as if you're trying to open up your rook on this line. It's not as if this pawn, this square is that important right now. But the game continued, Hans just occupying the centre, very natural, and white doing the same. So basically Magnus is saying, OK, we're playing a queen's pawn opening, but with colours reversed. So here I've just got the extra move A3, which can't hurt too much. So Magnus is basically trying to play black, but he's got this one extra move.
Do you think he's been following the results today? All of the winners have had the black pieces, so now he kind of, with the white pieces, wants to play on the black side. Yeah,
maybe he's just throwing away his first move advantage. Maybe it's a good psychological ploy.
But I mean, I have to say, as David mentioned, it's not that bad. You know, I remember in the early 2000s, you know, that I was having conversations with a French grandmaster, Eric Prier, and he was always saying, you know, this was his favourite move. And he was saying, it's not that bad.
Yeah, but he was mental.
It's not that bad, but it's not that good either.
Yeah. He even wrote articles about it, so, I mean...
you can write an article about anything, right? I mean, it doesn't mean it's good. I mean, it's a move, isn't it? It's a move, but it can't give white an advantage, I suppose, is the point. But maybe it doesn't make white's position worse, though, either.
Yeah, I mean, Magnus has played some far worse moves this tournament. I mean, 1F3 is very weakening, for example. But I think the reason we're slightly surprised is because we would never teach someone new to the game, new to chess, to push a pawn on the side of the board. We would say occupy the centre. It's only when you reach grandmaster level or very high levels that you can kind of freestyle and get away with this type of stuff on a consistent basis, like Magnus does. Yeah, you will be punished if you don't occupy the centre in every game, if you don't develop your pieces, castle the king, because eventually you'll come under some attack. You need to know when to break the rules and when to follow them. Essentially. But Magnus, psychologically, it's really interesting. We can't be too critical. Let's see how Hans reacts. Meanwhile, this game between Firouzja and Liem, it has slowed down slightly. Liem is the first one to pause and think, because Firouzja's kind of this pin that he's created with his dark square bishop now on the edge of the board towards the black knight and the black queen, that is very uncomfortable. And the acid test of this concept is to try and kick away this bishop even further, but that would be very weakening. And Liem, I think, is hesitant to weaken the black king, at the moment at least. What do you guys think of this opening?
Yeah, I played it once upon a time. You know, I decided that I was not going to play the Caro-Kann anymore. I was going to learn how to play something. And I was introduced to this opening, and I didn't know at the time that this was like the sharpest opening there was around. So I just kind of like merrily memorized my lines. And I also remember from those times that, yeah, you do have to kick away that bishop. And I can say that I actually just completely gave it up after I got smashed. I got totally smashed by Natasha Bojkovic, a strong woman grandmaster, and I did not have a chance whatsoever. She came armed to the teeth with preparation, and after that I thought, that's not fair. I don't want to lose games like that. So back to the Caro-Kann it was.
Yeah, this, as you mentioned, it's the sharpest line of any King's Pawn opening these days. I know a few other players who play this on a consistent basis, Gawain Jones, an English grandmaster, and I mean, he's had to memorize probably 25 moves of theory in 10 different lines just to get away with this type of opening. And it gives good results if you know what you're doing with black. Black's position, black's opening, very good. It's brought Alexei Shirov, another famous grandmaster, some great results. But yeah, I don't know. Personally, I'm not willing as well to kind of walk into my opponent's homework. I'd be scared that their computer is stronger than mine. Their computer's offered up some interesting suggestions that I haven't studied.
Sounds like their computer will be better than yours at the moment, David.
Yeah, I mean,
So, you know.
Talking about computers, I mean, I just had a look at the evaluation and the move suggested by the computer. The computer says only one move for black to kind of maintain equality, and that is simply just to pick up the pawn in front of the king, move it 2 squares, attack the bishop. But that is really, really weakening.
And there we see Stockfish's moves. Jovanka's computer, I think, is maybe even stronger than this. So black's best move, as we see there, is pushing the pawn to the g5 square, maybe even giving black decent chances. But yeah, it's not the move a human wants to play. The black king will never be safe for the rest of the game. And especially if you're Liem and you see Firouzja has not blinked, he's not spent a second on his clock, really. He's even gained time. You don't really want to play such a risky move against a well-prepared opponent. And here, white has a couple of options, I guess, Jovanka. Either you could step back with the bishop, or maybe more ambitiously, you could even sacrifice a piece. I'm not sure whether this works or not, but after a capture here, this is an eternal pin, and you really need to know what you're doing to survive this type of position. I mean, there's plenty of plans here. The rook could lift and swing across to start attacking the black king, and I would be terrified as black here.
Yeah, I have to show you what the computer is actually suggesting as a top choice for white. It's actually suggesting, instead of capturing the pawn, it's actually bishop takes knight.
OK, bishop takes knight first.
And then after bishop takes bishop... OK, and we are going to see it. And then the queen will make a small little move, queen c1. And, yeah.
Hitting this bishop, also keeping an eye on this diagonal. And, for example, if the bishop moves now, I mean, this is going to be even more deadly, a sacrifice. And look at this, we would see a massacre, the black king. Yeah, this would end the game immediately. So white really.
I've got another little rule now. I'm never playing this opening as black in my life. It's far too much to learn and far too scary. So I'm getting my little rules now.
And we're seeing it on the board, actually. So, I mean, just by the speed with which Firouzja is making the moves, I'm thinking that he's seen this before.
Yeah.
He's analysed this with a computer, and he knows exactly what to do.
Yeah.
But what could be the reason Liem is entering this? Because he knows a loss means he loses the match.
Yeah. I mean, it's a must-win situation, first of all. So it's risky. He could lose quickly, but if he survives, then maybe he has decent long-term chances. But also, it is part of his repertoire. I've seen him play this on the tour before this season. And, I mean, first of all, that actually makes you a sitting duck. It makes you a target. If you've played it before, your opponent can prepare something special. That's why it's so scary. I think me, Simon, Jovanka, I don't think we'll be touching this opening as black. There's just too much to know. But it is part of his repertoire, and he has had good results with this opening in the past, Liem. So, I mean, if I've had good results with an opening, I want to play it again, even if my opponents can come up with something, even if they prepare something special. But, yeah, survival is not guaranteed. That's the one problem here. And we are expecting to see, as Stockfish says, in front of us on our screens, the white queen sidestep 1 square. But even the other moves that the computer mentions, the immediate sacrifice of the white knight that we showed, opening up the black king, that looks very, very tempting and very scary as well for black.
I'd love to be white in these positions because they're very natural moves as well. I mean, you're opening up your opponent's king, probably not too much risk. It's not a do or die sacrifice because you got okay. He knows this stuff, and I guess the other thing to bear in mind is that Alireza Firouzja, he was playing in the candidates, so he's got that candidates preparation that some of the other players may not have. He spent months and months preparing, and something like this could well have been in his preparation for the candidates.
Do you know who he's working with?
Well, he was working before the candidates with Kramnik.
Aha.
But I don't think that's happening anymore.
Not after the interview, probably. It was an amazing interview, wasn't there? I mean,
that
was during the candidates, and Kramnik was reporting on some of the games, and one of Firouzja's games, I think he said he was just very, I don't know, very critical about his play, shall we say. I can't remember the exact words, but it was along the lines that this was an incredibly weak game by, and he was helping him as well, so it was very surprising what he said. I mean, he's probably being honest with his opinion, but it was, it's interesting to hear, I guess. But,
well, I've seen some pictures of Maxime Vachier-Lagrave in Miami, actually. He's a Frenchman. Is there any rumours he's working with Firouzja, the Frenchman teaming up?
Yeah, I mean, it's unconfirmed rumours, but I've heard from some of the other players in Miami that they think maybe there's some collaboration going on with the two Frenchmen there. And it's noticeable that Vachier-Lagrave and Firouzja, who now play for France, neither of them played the Olympiad.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So maybe they were studying together, maybe they were working together, and it would be too much of a coincidence, surely, for them both to be in Miami at the same time.
You say that, but I have to say, in Maxime's defence, he actually told me during Norway Chess that he was going to be in Miami, coincidentally, just to visit friends. Oh. Now, whether that was just kind of
a long way to go to visit friends. Just for 1 week, just for the dates 15th to 21st August.
I'm also wondering why they didn't play the Olympiad. I mean, I'm sure there's some reason there, but I mean, it's a big surprise, really, isn't it? Top two players don't play the Olympiad.
Actually, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave did tell me the reason why. I mean, it was just simply he was going to play if Alireza played, which I realise is adding fuel to the fire that they're working together. But since Alireza said no, I mean, he thought about it. He thought the weather would be perhaps too hot for him.
So he goes to Miami instead. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, we do have a bunch of moves on the board, David. Are you surprised by anything happening here?
It's along the lines of what we predicted, but we will explain a bit later.
Yeah, because we're talking about helpers and seconds and coaches, and there are a few of them in Miami. Young Praggnanandhaa, he had a great day yesterday. He won his match against Alireza Firouzja. Today he's playing against Anish Giri. And in Miami, as always, his coach is with him. And right now he's also with Sverre.
Yes, I'm sitting here with Ramesh right now. And you were just telling me here, Ramesh, that Prag is still in its preparation. Is that correct?
Yeah. I hope it's safe to say. Yeah. Reveal it now.
but it's been quite the journey for him, because yesterday it was all the deciding games, and today it's two games that probably should have been decided.
Yeah, in the first game, Prag completely forgot the preparation right in the opening after Anish played Castle, and they got into a mess as early as move 10, and for a very long time he was in a big mess. And even though Anish also did not react properly at many moments, gave a counterplay to Prag, and it ended in a draw. So that was a good escape, because losing first game with a white would have been a disaster. So good save. And the second game, Prag again got the preparation. After Queen A7, BB7, he should have continued better, not gone for the A3 pawn, and he would have got a clearly better position. Should have gone for a kingside attack. So it's both the games ending in a draw. It's in a way, fair result, I would say.
Well, when it comes to the location here, I mean, I must admit, I mean, we are sitting at a quite interesting area. We're on Miami Beach. You guys are used to this kind of heat, because today it is 100 degrees Fahrenheit. It's 36 degrees Celsius. It's humidity of 80%. Does this just feel like a normal day to you?
Yeah, very normal. So from where we come, Chennai, it's either hotter, or the hottest. So they should be in the middle.
So you're saying that Prag probably has a massive advantage to his other players with this scalding heat?
Yeah, he has a big weather advantage, I would say. But we are oddly dressed to be in a swimming pool.
Well, I'm definitely going in that swimming pool quite soon, I think. When it comes to the ambitions for this tournament, what do you expect from Prag going further?
In the last event at Oslo, he was leading for a very large part of the event and finished the fourth after losing the last two matches. But we hope to do better this time. And he has had a good start defeating Alireza, even though in a very lopsided match. I'm very optimistic.
Right now, we've had a really hard time working here, so I think that we should settle down by the poolside for a little bit, sit back and relax. And Kaya, cheers from Miami. Eden Rock Hotel, we are signing out.
I'm not jealous at all. Sitting here with my cup of coffee. Oh, you lucky guys. That looks amazing and interesting to hear from the great Ramesh talking about Praggnanandhaa aiming to win the FTX Crypto Cup in Miami, the young 17-year-old. And another youngster, the 19-year-old Alireza Firouzja, who lost to Praggnanandhaa yesterday. But now he is fighting to win the match against Liem. With a win in this game, he will decide the match and take all 3 points. And the bar has definitely gone over to his side, David. What's happening?
Yeah, it just looks like great opening preparation from Firouzja has helped him get a decently sized advantage. And the nature of the game has changed since we last left, so let's jump in to explain what has happened. We left it here where White's queen had attacked this bishop, also eyeing up this diagonal. Black's bishop did indeed move. It captured a pawn in the center. There's thunder above us again. And after the white knight captured, there's thunder on the board just temporarily. It looks very scary for black, but at least the black bishop now can jump back and defend. And at the very end, white is a piece down, but he captures the knight. And after the queen trade, if we do a quick count, white has an extra pawn. There's a 3 versus 1 advantage on this side of the board. And on the other side, black has 4 versus 3, but those 4 aren't motoring anytime soon. And just a couple more moves, black's rook moving, and now a pawn push, stopping the white knight from jumping forward. And it is a pawn. Black has the 2 bishops as compensation, but it's hard to imagine the 2 bishops being too great in this position. White's bishop, meanwhile, is actually a fantastic piece. Firouzja here pushes forward with his central pawn, and black blocks. At some point, I'm expecting these pawns to start motoring forward and really causing some problems to black on the king side. What do you guys think? Any compensation here for black? The computer gives +1, because I guess white does have an extra pawn after all.
I mean, at least black has a pawn majority on the queen side. This is similar to like you can sometimes get in the Benoni opening. And that pawn majority can be dangerous later on. If black can push them down the board, he's going to get a passed pawn. And with the bishop protecting it, there's maybe some counterplay, but at the end of the day, it is a pawn up, and white's pawns on the king side look much more scarier, especially with that really powerful dark square bishop around the black king. So certainly white's better, but it's not completely over for black, in my opinion.
Yeah, there is some chances for black to save the position, but I have to say, I mean, it's looking really unlikely, right? You know, because just of that monster bishop that white has. I mean, just look at it as just such a thorn in black's side. And as David's highlighted, the knight's going to jump forward, the pawns are going to start motoring. But, you know, I always say, if you're defending a position, you should always look for the positives and you should never, ever lose hope. So I'm going to go with Simon's answer, because that fits my philosophy.
I just seen the computer's given quite an interesting move as well, actually, which, glancing over is saying the black bishop can attack that rook, and maybe things are not too bad, actually, if you can play this move.
Okay.
With the idea you've got a pawn push, and those pawns suddenly become mobile in some situations. So,
Causes discomfort, at least.
Yeah.
White's rook cannot move. It has to stay defending. OK, he doesn't play it. The rook has to stay defending the knight. And as Simon mentions, you can at least gain time. Kick away this bishop. If it goes back, then, maybe you start motoring forward with these pawns. But instead, Liem chooses a different move, an alternative. He parks his rook in the center. Also very logical. He guards this square, taking this square away from the white knight. And he does threaten to double up his rooks along the e-file. This would be a bit scary. So how does Firouzja deal with this? The 2 moves that kind of call out to me immediately. One is to move the knight to attack this rook. But I'm not sure whether a rook trade helps. Also, I'm a bit reluctant to let the rook kick my bishop away from its dream outpost. This one is slightly tempting. The other move is this pawn push, but then again, it does allow black at some point to kind of open up with a check, gaining time. So Pros and cons behind both those ideas. Firouzja, though, he has to guard against black's rooks doubling up on the e-file.
Not so clear, is it?
Yeah, not at all, actually.
It looked a lot clearer earlier when Firouzja was just attacking, getting his preparation in. But I think this is good what Lee's done, because he got tricked in the theory and he's found the position where he's worse, but he can at least play and he won't get crushed immediately, which is always nice. So there's some chances here, I think. Yeah.
That's good psychology, because I think at some point or other we all get out-prepared, we all know less than our opponents in the opening, and number one goal is just to survive, right? And also to keep some advantages. You might be a pawn down, but you do have the 2 bishops long term. As you mentioned, you do have this pawn majority on the queen side. Something to hold on to, something to play for long term. And psychologically, it's always also difficult for the player here, Firouzja, who has prepared 20 moves, to suddenly switch into kind of thinking for themselves. Firouzja will know, OK, the computer gave him +1 after the opening. He knows the opening went well, but to figure out why for himself, that won't be too easy. So, OK, we do see this pawn push, kicking away the black rook, and a check. Discovered check to the white king.
It was played very quickly by Liem there, and OK, the king moves. Well, one of the downsides of that pawn push, actually, is that the rook has to actually vacate the 4th row. And this means that maybe the white knight can step into its ideal square.
Yeah, I'm not sure which way it goes. Probably this way, just to hit the bishop and to stop any potential checks. Yeah, now the bishop would love to come here and give a check, but it can be eliminated by the white knight. This actually, this position is on the board. And yeah, we talked about the 2 bishops. If white can make this exchange, that would make his life a lot easier. If he could also trade 1 set of rooks, then he's 1 step closer to converting his extra pawn long term. What does Liem have in store here?
I suppose the first move you calculate is, can you still play that check? And we know how good at calculating Firouzja is, so I'm sure he's got this one covered. But, OK, this has to be taken. You take with a pawn, and maybe it's a little bit murky here. I mean, that pawn's only 2 squares away from queening, so it might just be weak as well, though. It might just be captured, and I think it is probably weak here, but you can certainly consider this one first.
Something along these lines, the black pawn, if it could stay, I mean, if black just had 1 extra move, activate the rook, then he's doing well. But yeah, the question is, how do you keep this pawn alive? Yeah. Potentially. If it marches forward, maybe the bishop can come back and eliminate it. So it's something along these lines, you're right, Simon, that are going through Liem's mind right now. He's going to calculate, can you give a check? If not, can you at least keep this bishop alive? Maybe you can move it. The type of move I would want to play in the game is just to annoy the opponent, just kind of put the bishop right next to them in the white camp, just say, OK, you kick me out if you can, but if not, then the bishop might survive. OK, he chooses a different square. He keeps the bishop alive here instead. The reason I was reluctant is at some point you might get kicked by a pawn, but this isn't possible yet. If white's pawn steps forward, then the other pawn drops with a check. So, OK, decent move by Liem there. How does Firouzja just continue his mission to try and trade off pieces? Not easy, actually, still. If you trade a set of rooks, then the white knight is actually not on a stable square.
I just have to tell you, I am cheating. I'm looking at Carlsen Niemann again. Am I allowed to do that? Am I allowed to just have a little glance?
Oh, look at the bar in that one.
Look at the bar there. I know. Black. It's a day of black victories, and Niemann is, well, according to the computer, has a sizable advantage against Magnus in that game. So I just, I wanted to mention that because it's been a fascinating match as well. So it's going to come down to the last game, whatever, though. So we know that whatever the result in this game, we get one more game at least in this one. So very interesting stuff there.
But great that you're keeping an eye on that, Simon. And if you feel we should go over to that game, then you let us know. We can always do that.
Well, he may have just let all his advantage slip. So it could have been a brief one there. But, I mean, obviously the Firouzja game is very exciting as well, but it's just nice to keep an eye on that encounter as well. But has he let his advantage slip? I'm not sure. It's too much for me to look at quickly. I don't know.
A very complicated game there, but Niemann's doing the right thing. He is trying to punish Magnus for that kind of slightly unorthodox first move. And look at Magnus's body language, not happy at all. Hans Niemann, I can see on his screen as well, he's got a pre-move ready just in case Magnus trades a set of queens.
Interesting.
Liem looking confident. And clock times in that one, if we can look on the screen.
And let's see, it looks like 3 minutes for Hans, 9 minutes for Magnus.
Yeah, so that's maybe one hazard for Liem.
Imagine if Liem wins that one. I mean, we've got to get an interview, haven't we?
Yeah.
Because he's going to run out of catchphrases soon, surely. You know,
We need an interview either way, whatever the result.
Definitely, we do. Yeah. I mean,
He hasn't had any draws this tournament. I wonder what he'd say after a draw.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll repeat what he said before. The chess speaks for itself.
Yeah.
And walk away.
Walk away. Well, I'll be disappointed. I feel he needs a new catchphrase, right?
Yeah, he's got his
kind of.
He's better than that. He's better than that. Hans will give us something unique, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, in this game between Firouzja and Liem, sometimes, especially when I was younger, I used to like to solve puzzles. They called them self-mates or helpmates. And here, White could get checkmated if he's not careful. It would be a bit of a silly move, but if we just jump in, while Firouzja's thinking, long think now, if White's knight were to retreat, which is a bad move for a few reasons, suddenly checkmate in 2 moves. I just wanted to show this. Rook takes pawn, sacrifice, hitting the king. And now the bishop comes in, swoops in.
Is that Bowden's mate?
That is the Bowdens.
Is it Bowden's mate? Yeah, okay.
Checkmate on the board. So
Or the crisscross.
the crisscross.
Yeah.
I mean, this would be a very pretty way to end the game. I don't think Firouzja is going to fall for it, but that just to highlight the danger that does face the Frenchman right now.
Did you find, David, doing I know Jabava, a very strong player, mentioned that doing studies was the way that he improved the most? Because nowadays most people just concentrate on openings, and of course openings is important, but I do honestly think openings are overstudied. Quite, majority of books that are made on chess, it's something like 92% of all books on chess are opening books. When in actual fact, I think other areas of the game are more important. But do you think doing studies is a great way to improve or as well?
Definitely. I mean, I would say 2 things that really helped boost my game. I mean, one was doing puzzles, just general tactical puzzles. For example, it would be a position like this. It's like, spot the mate in 2 for black. You always look for checks, captures and threats first. If the checks work, then great. Checks could be very effective. You could end up checkmating the opponent. Captures work. You might win material. Threats, you might trap your opponent. But you're right, Simon, endgame studies. So not quite this position, perhaps, but just general endgames where you have to calculate deeply. I noticed that I was around 2600 rating for, 6 or 7 years. And then when I left university, I decided, OK, I'm going to work on my chess more seriously. I did a lot of endgame studies, guided by a few other players, and they said, OK, study like this, calculate like this. And suddenly within a year, I hit 2700. And it doesn't sound like much, but it was a boost. It was kind of breaking the next.
Hang on a minute, how'd you get to 2600 though? That's like, can we do that first step first?
I have no idea. That was just luck.
That's just natural. Like, oh dear. I mean, Okay.
I mean, it's the same at any level. It's not about the rating. It's just if you reach a plateau, then I think the next step is to force yourself to calculate every time. And I think that's why I get away with like other deficiencies in my game, being in time trouble, sometimes not always being so great in the opening. I can calculate my way out of trouble because I study those types of things. And I think that's why the young players of today, the new generation, are so great. They're so scary because they're so good at calculating. And we saw Ramesh chilling out on the sunbed there, just with his cocktail. But I know for a fact that he gives his students endgame studies all the time. I think they solve puzzles like that daily. Long, difficult variations. They have to calculate 10 moves, 15 moves of the head in their minds, and it works.
And his philosophy, I mean, he's just published a book, on chess calculation, and his philosophy is chess is hard. You've got to use and exercise those grey matter, and just... it is a difficult game, and you have to be as precise as you can. And where you can, he actually encourages blindfold visualization. That you start with a position on the board, and then every line that you calculate, has to be in your head. And you've got to be as precise as possible because this is going to help you in those critical moments.
Yeah, and I mean, Ramesh is an example of he's a grandmaster, he's a very strong player, but he can even help the elite players who are now maybe 100 points, 200 points stronger than him because he knows how to study chess and how to kind of structure your own thinking with endgame studies. That's a really good point, Simon.
Yeah. No, I think it's very interesting. I think a lot of people forget how hard chess is, and a lot of people who take up chess, they don't appreciate that actually to become as good as, anywhere near as good as these guys, requires a lot of work and a lot of dedication and a lot of solving stuff as well. You can't rely on just to get better by watching the odd YouTube video or something. You've got to think for yourself, and that is something people forget, you know.
We talk about chess geniuses, but there's a lot of work behind that geniusness, I guess.
I think
this is a made, not born.
Yeah, that's it. That's what Judith Poga says, isn't it? Geniuses are made and not born. I think she comes back to that a lot from her own upbringing. But yeah, and also looking at the game, David, is this turning maybe in Black's?
I was going to say, hasn't White got themselves in a bit of a tangle?
Yeah, possibly.
I mean, if anyone, I would pick Black as well. I guess you guys too.
Yeah. I mean, Black's passed pawn, which the pawn that's about to come past pawn, is much more dangerous than any pawn that White has. 2 bishops. Yeah. It's actually quite scary for Firouzja now.
Yeah, and especially after this rook move, which looks a bit superficial somehow. He just moved his rook across 2 moves ago. Now he has moved it back where it came from, and he's just terrified of this pawn, which he's right to be. But, OK, how can Black defend this pawn? You guys are right. If you can somehow march this down 2 squares where it's protected from by the bishop from afar, then Black is going to win the game. So you just need to kind of... There's like a barricade right now. This square is covered by 3 white pieces, by a pawn, a rook, and a bishop. So you need to get it past this kind of...
Maybe you can reroute that bishop, yeah? So the bishop that actually now is on a good square. Yeah. Because those 2 bishops, when they find these, they're going to be very dangerously pointing towards White's king.
That's clever, Simon. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, if you get one more move, suddenly... we showed one checkmate earlier with the 2 bishops, but this kind of laser-like vision, this is terrifying.
I definitely prefer Black now, actually. So.
Maybe we can get the Stockfish, the computer suggestions up on the screen, because this one is not easy. Retreating moves are not obvious at all, but there we go. It is the best move by far, Simon. No. This one gives Black the advantage. Anything else gives White the advantage. So dropping the bishop back, teaming it up with its mate over here. The whole idea is rook takes pawn is met by a pin. And you pin and you definitely win here. This just looks scary. I'm surprised it only gives 0.7 for Black, to be honest, after this bishop retreat.
I'm not sure where White can put the king. This is the problem, the position. The White king, does it have any safe squares?
I was wondering whether you could actually do the same kind of idea. You know, Black has gone backward with the bishop. Maybe the White knight can now reroute itself, go back to where it came from, and then when the bishop comes, then you can just jump into the centre. But perhaps... This is perhaps just simply saying there's no advantage whatsoever.
Just trying to head towards a draw or something, but still some play there, actually.
Yeah, I think you're right, Jovanka. Maybe that's one of the only ways to stop White's king coming under fire. But, for example, if Black does find this star move, if Liem finds it now, a backward knight move, it's not the most obvious idea in the position. White's knight looks pretty nice, so I think it's actually going to be very difficult just visually for Firouzja to find a knight retreat. Yeah, I mean, if Liem plays this one, I think he's actually a favourite in practical terms, at least. So, OK, big moment in the current position. Will Liem find the idea of rerouting his bishop back? And, he doesn't. He plays the second best move according to Stockfish there. But he gives a check. But now the 2 bishops are gone. Knight takes bishop has been played. And he's recaptured with his pawn. So something similar to what you showed earlier, Simon. This is a very scary pawn, but it's one-dimensional for Black. If this pawn doesn't save or win you the game, then... yeah, it's over. You'll just lose.
Yeah.
Now White does have several promising options as well, according to Stockfish. OK, will White just trade rooks, which is actually very sensible? Will White, for example, just ignore it and push his pawn forward? That's what the computer wants as its second choice. OK, Firouzja, now things are easier to calculate. He does find the most accurate idea. And if the Black pawn pushes, you don't capture the Black rook because Black makes a queen. Instead, of course, you just move your rook across and this pawn is doomed. Can't save it anymore.
Yeah, I was wondering whether Liem could be a bit flashy and maybe try to protect that pawn from a different angle and maybe push his b-pawn and try and keep the game alive that way, but probably not as...
Yeah, with the idea to keep the pawn alive here.
Yeah.
I guess a big threat now. You want to come and check and remove the defender and promote the Black pawn, but at the very least, I guess White can bring his bishop back, and just if we see more trades. The problem is, we did this count earlier. White has the 3 versus 1 on the king side, so no matter what happens on the rest of the board, long term, the 3 will beat the 1. And the more pieces that disappear, the more important that factor becomes. I don't know, suddenly Liem missing that golden opportunity of retreating his bishop. I think he might have blown it.
Yeah, and if he loses this game, he's out of today anyway. Not out of the whole thing, but he loses this mini match, so it's a very, very important game for him. But it looks like he's heading to a loss now.
Yeah, the White King is just doing a great job. It's within what we call the box. So the box is when an opponent's passed pawn is coming down, but you kind of draw a line down to its kind of start square. You draw a line across, and this is the box. And the White King is within touching distance of this pawn, so it will always save the day. And this pawn push has happened. The rook does slide across. I think we'll see Jovanka's variation there. We're heading in that way. We'll see a capture now from Firouzja. This pawn is too dangerous to be left alive, I assume. And then after a capture, we'll see this variation of the bishops getting traded, and we will see a rook endgame where White has an extra pawn. These two will eventually win the game for Firouzja.
Are you that certain now?
Yes. I mean, rook endgames, they have some drawish tendencies, but I can't see miracles happening in this one, unfortunately, for Liem.
And then not only win him the game, but the match, Alireza Firouzja, who lost yesterday. So this will be a big match win for him if he is able to beat Liem, who also lost his match yesterday to Levon Aronian. So a bad start to the FTX Crypto Cup for Liem. But Firouzja making his debut this season on the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour. He's finally getting in the groove. And we know what a fantastic chess player, and especially online and rapid chess player he can be. Are we starting to see now the best of Firouzja?
I think by the end of this tournament, we will be seeing the best of him. Obviously, yesterday was a bit tricky. In the end, he was unlucky in the end, and he couldn't convert that advantage against Prague. But yeah, if he wins this one, he's also a form player. If he gets on a roll, he's hard to stop.
Yeah.
As I found out at the Grand Swiss last year, he was on a roll, winning all his games, and then I've met him. He took me down. So
he mentioned that in the greetings video where he congratulated you on your Olympic gold. He said something about the tournament on the Isle of Man. He said he wished you could have played more games.
Yeah, it was a really dramatic game. It was a big time scramble. I found a really clever resource, but he was just too strong in the end. He calculated more than me. And that's how he qualified for the candidates. If I'd won, it would have been the other way around. But yeah, I'd love to get a chance against him. But I'm scared that he's kind of going in one direction. And, I think he'll have his sights set higher. I once played a 50-game blitz marathon with him online.
50 game?
50 game.
Oh.
In total.
Oh, wow. How long did that last?
A few hours. Good few hours.
Do you remember the score?
I think he beat me by about 10 points overall, so...
That's not bad, because he's very bullet, I guess, as well, yeah?
It was blitz.
Blitz, OK, right.
Bullet, I have no chance. He's one of the fastest hands in the West. Firouzja.
Yep.
And we have reached this rook endgame where White does have 4 versus 3, but it's more important that the White pawns on the king side, the right side, they are connected.
And it's Liem who needs to be fast here. He only has a little over 1 minute left on his clock.
Yeah. And, well, things are not looking great for Liem, but he is in survival mode. And, OK, Firouzja stepping forward with the king.
And when will they start pushing those white pawns that David highlighted?
Probably now.
Probably now, as soon as possible. But, I mean, he has to be careful. The only thing that I would say is that when you start advancing those pawns, you've got to do it as a team. You know, you have to remember that word. Teamwork makes the dream work. And, you know, back those pawns up with the king, you know, have them advance slowly and steady. It wins the race, for sure. And it's also about mobilising the rook at the right time. So... But if you do all those things, the result is pretty much inevitable.
Yeah. And I like what Firouzja is doing. He's got time on the clock and he's pausing. He's kind of just working out that he can connect all the pawns, step them up in a safe way. I like what he's doing compared to what Duda did in the last game, where Duda had 10 seconds and he kind of rushed and nearly let the win slip. So Firouzja now, I guess he's going to just advance either the white king or the white pawns in some kind of order, but there they go. And I like starting with that one. It's the middle pawn, and it will be supported by both pawns from the side as well. The white king has a nice safe square behind that pawn as well. And, OK, black's king stepping forward. Liem's doing the right thing. You have to go active with one piece. Black's rook is passive, just defending pawns, so black's king has been tasked with going towards the centre. Now, what else to do? Liem is, he's just got to confuse Firouzja here somehow. Black's majority, black only has one passed pawn, that's the A pawn, and it's kept under lock and key by the white rook right now, so he wants to somehow distract or deflect away the white rook so that that black A pawn can start running.
But I don't think black is actually threatening to come in with the king, unfortunately, because that pawn can be defended by the white rook putting itself on the A5 square.
Yeah.
So I think he just has to disregard that threat, not get scared by anything. And he deals with the threat, actually, by pushing his f-pawn forward. And Liem steps forward with rook, gets the rook active. Why not?
White king's a bit more exposed now, though. I was a bit surprised he pushed that pawn. As in now, the black rook has more checks. It's probably still very grim, but he doesn't have a safer square for the king.
And
maybe it makes
especially
no
now,
difference.
right? You know, because I was kind of advocating that you kind of march together with your pawns as a group. I was surprised that he let his king potentially be cut off, but Firouzja has the faith in his pawns. He's just going to push him.
It's probably still just winning, isn't it? Quite, just by pushing them.
Yeah, they are connected after all still.
Yeah.
They protect each other, so the white king can kind of have freedom to start dancing forward at some point. White's rook is quite nicely placed, to be honest, just stopping black's central pawn from advancing, just pinning it. Yeah, I mean, it's just a question of whether Firouzja can go straight for the kill by pushing his pawns even further up the board, or whether he remanoeuvres the white king or the white rook first.
All right, well, we could have the first white win in today's matches, and not only in this game, but look at the bar in the game between Praggnanandhaa and Giri. 2 draws between them so far, but in game 3, the bar just jumped up for Praggnanandhaa against Anish Giri. He could be about to take the lead in this match. Young Praggnanandhaa, trouble for Anish Giri, and Magnus Carlsen against Hans Niemann as well. The bar has jumped up now for Magnus Carlsen in what seems to be a very interesting game. These two are tied after 2 games. They won 1 game each, and Magnus could be about to take the lead now in the match. Alireza Firouzja, however, he can decide the match if he wins this game, and the bar is also all the way over to his side in this game. Is it getting close?
Yes, I actually quite like his last rook move. You guys were worried about checks against the white king, but the white rook keeps everything nice and safe. He's playing slow and steady right now, Firouzja. He's not taking too many risks with the white pawns. And
Yeah, I was just going to say one move that white perhaps maybe should not do, certainly not take it lightly, is actually push the pawn forward and give the king a check, because this will encourage the black king to come forward.
yeah, that's actually probably the reason he played his last move, Jovanka. This check would allow the black king to get active and maybe still winning. Maybe you're still quite quick with your pawns, but now the margin for error has been lessened. Suddenly your pawns might start to fall. So, OK, he moved his rook up, cutting the black king across on this line. And if we catch up with the current position just a few moves later, white has kind of trapped the black rook down on this square. And maybe now's the time, now that the black king can no longer take a step forward. Now maybe the time to check. Wherever the black king goes, you can start marching the white king forward. It's got a safe haven here. This looks pretty straightforward. OK, Firouzja, again, not taking any risk at all. Instead of giving the check, he drops his rook back. He's going to put his rook behind the passed pawn. Also good strategy in rook endgames. And then he'll propel the pawn forward. Any rook endgame, any rook trades here will just win for white. So, yeah, maybe nice and steady.
Yeah. I'm a bit gutted, actually, that they had the competition yesterday where you had to pick the winner for the crypto key, which I hope everyone at home did, because it was $15,000.
Yeah.
And I said Prague, and I'm really now going from my brain. I didn't get it in. Silly me, because I was working too hard here, of course.
Of course.
You know,
we should give you a second chance.
Yeah, I should have a second chance, but I'm wondering how many people actually bet on Prague to win, because I could have won like a serious amount of money there. So I'm really interested. You know, this is the Crypto Cup, and people should investigate. There's loads of cool free stuff that people can sign up for there. But how many people pick Prag to win? Because he's a good bet, I think. You know, just
Not too many people will.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Not as many as Carlson or something. Yeah. So it might, you know.
I'll ask the people in control.
Maybe I don't want to know now, but maybe I don't want to know how much I could have won. So, like,
how many said Prag? How many said Magnus? You know, how many said? Remember, the ones who answer correctly, they share $15,000, which is a great prize. And remember also to claim your free FTX Crypto Cup key. It's a great way to join in all the fun of the FTX Summer of Chess and a bunch of prizes, a bunch of cool content if you claim your key and join the Discord community for the FTX Crypto Cup. And Alireza Firouzja, maybe someone also answered him because he is a fantastic chess player and he could be about to win the match after only 3 games here against Liem.
He should still be winning. The White King now going across to deal with Black's remaining hope, that passed pawn. And I've got to say, Simon, it's the commentator's curse. The moment you started praising Prag, he let the win slip.
Oh, really? Right, okay.
So I don't know why it happens like that. Anytime I say, oh, I'm supporting Iranian, the win slips. If it's always that way.
I'm kind of like, so I would have bet on Prag because I think it was quite a good thing. So I really like Prag, but I'm kind of now hoping he doesn't win just because I'd be really annoyed with myself. So it's like, you know, but you know, he could easily win this competition, I think, because he's strong enough. But beating Anish is never simple.
No, definitely not easy. And I actually went for Duda.
Yeah, it's a good bet as well.
My eyes on him as well. So, and Firouzja just seems to be playing it very effortlessly here. Great result for him because he's just simply going to march his king forward, keep an eye on Black's passed pawn, and of course get on with the main job, which is to escort those pawns on the right to the destination.
Yep.
And look at this. White has the most. But hang on a second. The bar just
Commentator's
went down.
curse.
It just went down, right? Oh,
I haven't seen the bar move, Jovanka.
oh okay. On my computer, it went down. I haven't seen
different
the
bar.
move.
Yeah.
Okay, what has happened here? So let's try and work it out. Has Black somehow conjured up some magic? Has Firouzja let the win slip? What could Black be trying here? It looks hopeless. White's pawns are connected. White's rook is just going to come across and deal with Black's passed pawn.
I mean,
maybe there's a miracle here somehow. I don't see it, I've got to say.
could it be that, you know, simply Black starts destabilizing the pawns and gets very active with the king? Or it could be just...
The king coming forward? What is the idea now? Either if White gives a check with a pawn, kicking the Black king away, or if White just moves his rook across and tries to attack the Black pawn.
By cheating, it said just defending the pawn was okay, believe it or not. But
okay, defending the pawn now with Black.
no, one move before. Before the
Okay.
king, but that
But
doesn't
does-
make any sense.
Wow. I mean, maybe there was some miracle save there, but even if we see the moves, even if we see the best computer moves, it's hard to understand why.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just the fact that White's rook is tied down now. White's rook is passive.
But now it thinks that White's completely winning, so there's a bit of a mystery there, I think. I
mysterious.
don't know.
And, OK, how can White win this game? It's still not easy, though. White is playing without his rook. Firouzja down under 10 seconds. OK, full credit to Liem for even making this difficult. OK, he gives a check, hitting the Black king. The Black king steps back. I think this is a clever choice of square. The Black king has to stay within touching distance of the White pawns. And what next for Firouzja?
No, it's not easy, actually, for Firouzja. I didn't like that he kind of spoiled the integrity of his pawns.
They're no longer all connected, defending each other. The White king is going after Black's pawn, but now the Black rook could potentially start hitting some pawns.
Who would it favour to get rid of the rooks?
White.
Okay.
White will win if the rooks come off the board. OK, he's tried to challenge a set of pawns now, but White has a protected passed pawn. That White g-pawn, OK, a set of pawns have been exchanged, but that passed g-pawn is going to win the game now. This should be enough. I mean, maybe there was a miraculous draw. I'm definitely going to go back and study that game, study this endgame later. I definitely recommend everyone at home to do the same because rook endgames, they're the hardest ones to learn about. We know the general rules like active king, active rook, rooks behind passed pawns, but there's always exceptions. And OK, this is a check. It's also funny that Prag and Anish Giri, they're playing a rook endgame as well, slightly similar to this one.
Oh.
So where white is also a pawn up. And, OK, this check has forced white's king back.
Again, you've still got to win this position,
Still gotta win it,
but it's white's pawns are looking very good.
Yeah, that's the key, to protect each other, right? So the white king now will go and attack that black rook, I guess. And Liem still fighting. OK, a check first. And now you need to defend your f-pawn with white. This does the job. Black's rook needs to move now. Maybe it will give a check. White's king will sidestep if that's the case. There we go. And yeah, you still need to win it. You're right, Simon. I guess white's winning idea is to go and attack this remaining black pawn. Black's pawn is very weak after all. There we go.
And then the only way to defend is to move the king.
Got a lot of checks, haven't you? This is the thing. I
A
mean,
few checks.
not enough.
The white king is going to zigzag back towards the black rook. And I guess it will use the H file. You don't want to get checked where black can hit your king and your pawns at the same time.
And the f pawn is now dropping, right?
Yeah. Black's remaining pawn, I don't think it's defendable.
OK, that's...
And look at that, Magnus Carlsen leaves the arena, he wins. Game 3 against Niemann, he takes the lead now by 1 point. And that means Hans Niemann, he has to win Game 4, starting in 10 minutes to take it to tiebreaks. A comeback by Magnus Carlsen, who lost the first game against Hans Niemann today. Alireza Firouzja, he can decide it right now if he wins this game.
Yeah, and he's going the long way round with his king, but it looks good enough. The white king has gone on a journey. How does black defend his pawn? The problem is, if the black king goes to defend it, then the black king will get displaced by a nasty check. I think we'll see that happen in a moment. Will we see black continue checking the white king? No, we do see the checks would have run out, and this is the key move. Next move, white's rook does go to attack the black pawn. And we will see it.
Right now, the rook moved to f7 square, and that's it. It's game over, right?
Yeah,
Unless... No.
There's a miracle stalemate or something, but I think the black king has enough squares. And there we go. Prag and Anish Giri ended up in king versus king.
Wow.
It's a draw.
It was a draw. 3 draws so far by Pragnananda and Anish Giri, tied before Game 4. It feels like we will see some tie breaks today, finally. And hopefully Jan-Christoph Duda and Levon Aronian, they also played a draw and they are tied. They won 1 game each and 1 draw. So they are tied, but Alireza Firouzja, he is about to decide this match against Liem. Very bad start to the tournament for Liem, losing both of the 2 first matches.
Yeah, and Liem has set a couple of clever traps.
Okay.
Trying to work out how to win. Suddenly Firouzja leaned forward. He realised it's not as easy as he thought, and maybe we can keep an eye on the player. We just have to show this. Firstly, big trap in the position. If you get greedy and capture this pawn, then you actually lose as white. You get checked, and there's a skewer. Next move, the white rook is lost. But even if you march your king forward, and I was going to say that you have to be careful after a check. If you go the wrong direction, then you do blow the win. You have to go forward. If you'd gone back, then after rook takes rook, I think this is a draw. The black king can just step across. And now, if you take this pawn, it is stalemate. So you had to avoid that pitfall, but he has gone forward instead. And now rook takes rook clearly doesn't work because white will make a new queen. And Firouzja's idea is that if the black king gives black rook gives a check, the white king steps back, and it will be the white king that tries to take this pawn. And that being said, a check, and this is a win. And here, white should be careful. Well, white doesn't have to be careful here. You can just go either way with the king. And black's king has to move out the way. You make a new queen. Finally.
Will we see another queen, do you think, in this game, or will it end before that happens?
He'll resign, most likely. And yeah, if we go back to the current position, if you can't get away with trading rooks, if you can't get away with a check, what else? Yeah.
Resign.
Resign time. Yep.
Just resign.
King is coming for the pawn.
Just get it over with. Resign. No, he said a lot of very clever traps, and I've noticed this with Liem Lequang. He's really tricky, and he's very determined. I mean, here, your last punt is to maybe go for some stalemate with these when you're playing against these 2 connected pass pawns. So try to put your king in the corner and hope, but it's not it's really hard to do it here. I mean, if you got the pawns over one more flank, you got more stalemate tricks, but this is pretty trivial, isn't it now?
Yeah. And now you can see the white king is coming to the defense of the passed pawns, and this will basically release the white rook and allow it to just move over to the left side. And, OK.
You can hide from any checks behind your own pawns now. This is why two connected passed pawns are always winning. They protect each other, they create hiding spaces for your king from checks. And look, no more checks now. Black's king not stalemated, it still has one escape square, and it's elementary. You just move the white rook away, you give a check to the black king, and there are checkmating ideas all over the place. And there we go, the evaluation bar is going crazy.
Yeah.
It's game over any second. White just needs to maybe move his king out the way right now.
Move his king, threaten checkmate, and this will be game over. Game, set, and match. I like that tennis.
Game, set, match that.
Yeah.
And there we go.
There we go. It's a result. After black blocks this check, a rook trade, white would win the king and pawn endgame. Firouzja takes the win.
Yeah.